Chapter 2 of Subspace Survivors by E. Doc Smith. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the time of this chronicle, the status of interstellar flight was very similar to that of intercontinental jet plane flight in the 1960s. Starships were designed by humanity's best brains, carried every safety device those brains could devise. They were maintained and serviced by ultra-skilled, ultra-trained, ultra-able crews. They were operated by the creme de la creme of manhood. Only a man with an extremely capable mind and an extremely capable body could become an officer of a subspacer. Statistically, starships were the safest means of transportation ever used by man. So safe that very important persons use them regularly, unthinkingly, and as a matter of course. Statistically, the starship's fatality rate per million passenger light years was a small fraction of that of the automobile's per million passenger miles. Insurance companies offered odds of tens of thousands to one that any given star traveler would return unharmed from any given star trip he cared to make. Nevertheless, accidents happened. A chillingly large number of lives had, as a total, been lost, and no catastrophe had ever been even partially explained. No message of distress or call for help had ever been received. No single survivor had ever been found, nor any piece of wreckage. And on the great wheel of fate, the Procyon's number came up. In the middle of the night, Carlisle Destin came instantaneously awake, feeling with his every muscle and with his every square inch of skin, listening with all the force he could put into his auditory nerves, while deep down in his mind, a huge, terribly silent voice continued to yell, "Danger! Danger! Danger!" In a very small fraction of a second, Carlisle Destin moved, and fast. Seizing Barbara by an arm, he leaped out of bed with her. "We're abandoning ship. Get into the suit, quick!" "But, what? But I've got to dress!" "No time, snap it up!" He practically hurled her into her suit, clamped her helmet tight, then he leaped into his own. "Skipper," he snapped into the suit's microphone. "Destin! Emergency! Abandon ship!" The alarm bells clanged once. The big red lights flashed once. The sirens barely started to growl, then quit. The whole vast fabric of this ship trembled and shuddered and shook as though it were being mauled by 1,000 impossibly gigantic hammers. Destin did not know, and never did find out, whether it was his captain or an automatic that touched off the alarm. Whichever it was, the disaster happened so fast that practically no warning at all was given. And out in the corridor, "Come on, girls, sprint!" He put his arm under hers and urged her along. She did her best, but in comparison with his trained performance, her best wasn't good. "I've never been checked out on sprinting in spacesuits," she gasped. "Let go of me and go on ahead. I'll follow." Everything went out. Lights, gravity, air circulation, everything. "You haven't been checked out on free fall either. Hang on to this tool hanger here on my belt and we'll travel." "Where to?" she asked, hurling through the air much faster than she had ever gone on foot. "Baby 2, that is, Lifecraft number 2, my crash assignment. Good thing I was down here in the middle. I'd never had made it from up top. Next quarter left, I think." Then, as the light of his headlamp showed numbers on the wall, "Yes, square left. I'll swing you." He swung her, and they shot to the end of the passage. He kicked a lever, and the Lifecraft's port swung open to reveal a blaze of light and a startled gray-haired man. "What happened? What happened?" the man began. "Wrecked. We've had it. We're abandoning ship. Get into that cubby over there, shut the door tight behind you, and stay there." "But can't I do something to help?" "Without a suit and not knowing how to use one, you'd get burned to a cinder. Get in there and jump." The oldster jumped, and Destin turned to his wife. "Stay here at the port, Bobby. Wrap one leg around that lever to anchor you. What does your telltale read? That gauge there, your radiation meter? It reads 20, same as mine, just pink, so we've got a minute or so. I'll roust out some passengers and toss 'em to you. You toss 'em along in there. Can do?" She was white and trembling. She was very evidently on the verge of being violently sick, but she was far from being out of control. "Can do, sir." "Good girl, sweetheart. Hang on 1 minute more and we'll have gravity and you'll be okay." The first 5 doors he tried were locked, and since they were made of armor plate, there was nothing he could do about them except give each one a resounding kick with a heavy steel boot. The 6th was unlocked, but the passengers, a man and a woman, were very evidently and very gruesomely dead. So was everyone else he could find, until he came to a room in which a man in a spacesuit was floundering helplessly in the air. He glanced at his telltale. 32. High in the red, almost against the pin. "Bobby, what do you read?" 26. "Good. I found only one, but we're running out of time. I'm coming in." In the life craft, he closed the port and slammed on full drive away from the ship. Then, wheeling, he shook Barbara out of her suit like an ear of corn and shed his own. He picked up a fire extinguisher-like affair and jerked open the door of a room a little larger than a clothes closet. "Jump in here." He slammed the door shut. "Now strip, quick." He picked the canister up and twisted 4 valves. Before he could get the gun into working position, she was out of her pajamas. The fact that she had been wondering visibly what it was all about had done nothing whatever to cut down her speed. A flood of thick, creamy foam almost hid her from sight, and Destin began to talk, quietly. "Thanks, sweetheart, for not slowing us down by arguing and wanting explanations. This stuff is decon, short for decontaminant, complete, compound, absorbent, and chelating, type DCQ-429. Used soon enough, it takes care of radiation. Rub it in good, all over you, like this." He set the foam gun down on the floor and went vigorously to work. "Yes, hair too. Every square millimeter of skin and mucous membrane. Yes, into your eyes. It stings 'em a little, but that's a lot better than going blind. And your mouth. Swallow 6 good big mouthfuls. It's tasteless and goes down easy. Now the soles of your feet. Okay. The last will hurt plenty, but we've got to get some of it into your lungs. And we can't do it the hospital way. So when I slap a glob of it over your mouth and nose, inhale hard and deep. Just once is all anybody can do, but that's enough. And don't fight. Any ordinary woman I could handle, but I can't handle you fast enough. So if you don't inhale deep, I'll have to knock you cold, otherwise you'll die of lung cancer. Will do?" "Will do, sweetheart. Good and deep, no fight." And she emptied her lungs. He slapped it on, she inhaled good and deep, and went into convulsive paroxysms of coughing. He held her in his arms until the worst of it was over, but she was still coughing hard when she pulled herself away from him. "But how about you?" She could just barely talk. Her voice was distorted, almost inaudible. "Let me help you, quick." "No need, darling. 2 other men out there. The old man probably won't need it. I think I got him into the safe quick enough. The other guy and I will help each other. So lie down there on the bunk and take it easy until I come back here and help you get the gum cock off. So long for half an hour, pet." 45 minutes later, while all 4 were still cleaning up the messes of foam, something began to buzz sharply. Destin stepped over to the board and flipped a switch. The communicator came on. Since everything aboard a starship is designed to fail safe, they were, of course, in normal space. On the visiplates, hundreds of stars blazed in vari-colored points of hard, bright light. "Baby 2 acknowledging," Destin said. "First Officer Destin and 3 passengers. Decon to 0. Report, please." "Baby 3. Second Officer Jones and 4 passengers. Decon to—" "Thank God, Herc." Formality vanished. "With you to astrogate us, we may have a chance. But how'd you make it? I'd have sworn a flying saucer couldn't have gotten down from the top in the time we had." "Same thing right back at you, babe. I didn't have to come down. We were in Baby 3 when it happened." Full vision was on. A big, square-jawed, lean, tanned face looked out at them from the screen. "Huh? How come? And who's we? My wife and I. Second Officer Theodore Hercules Jones was somewhat embarrassed. I got married too, day before yesterday. After the way the old man chewed you out, though, I knew he'd slap irons on me without saying a word. So we kept it dark and hid out in Baby 3. These 3 are all we could find before our meters went high red. I deconned Bun, then... Bun? Barbara broke in. Bernice Burns? How wonderful! Formerly Bernice Burns. The face of a platinum blonde beauty appeared on the screen beside Jones. And am I glad to see you, Barbara, even if I did just meet you yesterday. I didn't know whether I'd ever see another girl's face or not. Let's cut the chat, Destin said then. Herc, give me a course, blast, and time for rendezvous. Hey, my watch stopped. So did mine, Jones said. So just hold 1 gravity on 18-47-271, and I'll correct you as necessary. After setting course and still thinking of his watch, Destin said, But it's non-magnetic. It never stopped before. The gray-haired man spoke. It was never in such a field before. You see, those 2 observations of fact invalidate 24 of the 38 best theories of hyperspace. But tell me, am I correct in saying that none of you were in direct contact with the metal of the ship when it happened? We avoided in case of trouble. You, name and job? Destin jerked his head at the younger stranger. I know that much. Henry Newman, crew chief, normal space jobs, unlimited. Your passengers, Herc? Vince Lepresto, financier, and his 2 bodyguards. They were sleeping in their suits, on air mattresses. Grounders, don't like subspace, or space either. Just so. The gray-haired man nodded, almost happily. We survivors, then, absorbed the charge gradually. But what the... Destin began. One moment, please, young man. You perhaps saw some of the bodies. What were they like? They looked, well, not exactly as though they had exploded, but... He paused. Precisely, Gray Hair beamed. That eliminates all the others except 3. Mortons, Sebrings, and Rothsteins. You're a specialist in subspace, then? Oh, no, I'm not a specialist at all. I'm a dabbler, really. A specialist, you know, is one who learns more and more about less and less until he knows everything about nothing at all. I'm just the opposite. I'm learning less and less about more and more, hoping in time to know nothing at all about everything. In other words, a fellow of the college. I'm glad you're aboard, sir. Oh, a theoretician. Barbara's face lit up, and she held out her hand. With dozens of doctorates in everything from astronomy to zoology? I've never met. I'm ever so glad to meet you, Doctor. Adams. Andrew Adams. But I have only 8 at the moment. Earned degrees, that is. But what were you doing in this life craft? No, let me guess. You were X-ray-eyeing it and fine-toothing it for improvements made since your last trip and storing the details away in your eidetic memory. Not eidetic by any means, merely very good. And how many metric tons of apparatus have you got in the hold? Destin asked. Less than 6. Just what I must have in order to... Babe! Jones's voice cut in. Course change. Stay on Alpha 18. Shift Beta to 44 and Gamma to 265. Rendezvous was made. Both life craft hung motionless relative to the Procyon's hulk. No other life craft had escaped. A conference was held. Weeks of work would be necessary before Destin and Jones could learn even approximately what the damage to the Procyon had been. Decontamination was automatic, of course, but there would be literally hundreds of hot spots, each of which would have to be sought out and neutralized by hand. The passengers' effects would have to be listed and stored in the proper cabins. Each body would have to be given velocity away from the ship, and so on. Every survivor would have to work, and work hard. The 2 girls wanted to be together. The 2 officers almost had to be together, to discuss matters at unhampered lengths and to make decisions. Each was, of course, almost as well versed in engineering as he was in his own specialty. All ship's officers from 1st to 5th had to be, and as long as they lived, or until the Procyon made port, All responsibility rested, first, upon First Officer Destin, and second, upon Second Officer Jones. Therefore, Theodore and Bernice Jones came aboard Lifecraft 2, and Destin asked Newman to flit across to Lifecraft 3. Not me. I like the scenery here better. Newman's eyes raked Bernice's 5 feet 8 of scantily clad sheer beauty from ankles to coiffure. If you're too crowded, I know a Lifecraft carries only 50 people. Go yourself. As a crew chief, you know the law. Destin spoke quietly. Too quietly, as the other man should have known. I am in command. You ain't in command of me, pretty boy, Newman sneered. You can play God when you're on sked, with a ship full of trained dogs to bite for you. But out here where nobody has ever come back from, I make my own law with this. He patted his side pocket. Draw it, then. Destin's voice now had all the top-deck rasp of his rank. Or crawl. The first officer had not moved. His right hand still hung quietly at his side. Newman glanced at the girls, both of whom were frozen, at Jones, who smiled at him pityingly, at Adams, who was merely interested. Yours is right where you can get at it, he faltered. You should have thought of that sooner. But this once, I won't move a finger until your hand is in your pocket. Just wing him, babe, Jones said then. He looks strong enough, except for his head. We can use him to shovel out the gumcuck and clean up. I'll have to kill him sometime, and the sooner the better. Square between the eyes. Do you want 100 limit at $10 a millimeter on how far the hole is off dead center? The two girls gasped, stared at each other, and at the two officers in horror. But Jones said calmly, without losing any part of his smile, I don't want a dime's worth of that. I've lost too much money that way already. At which outrageous statement both girls knew what was going on and smiled in relief. And Newman misinterpreted those smiles completely, especially Bernice's. The words came hard, but he managed to say then, I crawl. Crawl what? I crawl, sir. You want my gun? Keep it. There's a lot more difference than that between us. How close can you count seconds? Plus or minus 5%, sir. Close enough. Your first job will be to build some kind of a brute force belt or gear thing to act as a clock. You will really work. Any more insubordination or any malingering at all, and I'll put you into a lifecraft and launch you into space, where you can make your own laws and be monarch of all you survey. Dismissed. Now flit. Newman flitted, fast, and Barbara, turning to her husband, opened her mouth to speak and shut it. No, he would have killed the man. He would have had to. He still might have to. Wherefore, she said instead, Why'd you let him keep his pistol? The slime? And after you actually saved his life, too. With some people, what's past doesn't count. The other was just a gesture. Psychology. It'll slow him down, I think. Besides, he'd have another one as soon as we get back into the Procyon. But you can lock up all their guns, can't you? Bernice asked. I'm afraid not. How about the other three, Herc? With thanks to you, Barbara, for the word slime. If Lopresto is a financier, I'm an angel, with wings and halo complete. Gangsters, hoodlums, racketeers. You'd have to open every can of concentrate aboard to find all their spare artillery. Check. The first thing to do is... One word first, Bernice put in. I want to thank you, No, not first officer. But I could hardly... Sure you can. I'm babe to us all. And you're Bun. As to the other, forget it. You and I, Herc, will go over and I, Adams put in definitely. I must photograph everything before it is touched. Therefore, I must be the first on board. I must do some autopsies, and also... Of course you're right, Destin said. And if I haven't said it before, I'm tremendously glad to have a big brain along. Oh, excuse that crack, please, Dr. Adams. It slipped out on me. Adams laughed. In context, I regard that as the highest compliment I have ever received. To you youngsters, My advanced age of 52 represents senility. Nevertheless, you men need not doctor me. Either Adams or Andy will do very nicely. As for you two young women, I'm going to call you Uncle Andy, Barbara said with a grin. Now, Uncle Andy, you being a big brain, the term being used in its most complimentary sense, and the way you talked, one of your 8 doctorates is in medicine? Of course. Are you any good at obstetrics? In the present instance, I am perfectly safe in saying. Wait a minute, Destin snapped. Bobby, you are not. I am too. That is, I don't suppose I am yet, since we were married only last Tuesday. But if he's competent, and I'm sure he is, I'm certainly going to. If we get back to Earth, I want to, and if we don't, both Bun and I have got to. Castaway's code, you know. So how about it, Uncle Andy? I know what you two girls are, Adam said quietly. I know what you two men must of necessity be. Therefore, I can say without reservation that none of you need feel any apprehension whatsoever. Destin was about to say something, but Barbara forestalled him. Well, we can think about it anyway and talk it over. But for right now, I think it's high time we all got some sleep. Don't you? It was, and they did. And after they had slept and had eaten breakfast, the 3 men wafted themselves across a couple of 100 yards of space to the crippled starship. Powerful floodlights were rigged. What a mess! Destin's voice was low and wondering. The whole top looks as though she'd crash-landed and spun out for 8 miles, but the middle and tail look untouched. Inside, however, devastation had gone deep into the middle. Bulkheads, walls, floors, structural members were torn, sheared, twisted into weirdly distorted shapes impossible to understand or explain. And much worse were the absences, for in dozens of volumes, of as many sizes and of shapes incompatible with any 3-dimensional geometry, every solid thing had vanished, without leaving any clue whatever as to where or how it had gone. After 3 long days of hard work, Adams was satisfied. He had taken pictures as fast as both officers could process the film. He had covered many miles of tape with words, only half of which either spaceman could understand. Then finally he said, Well, that covers the preliminary observations as well as I know how to do it. Thank you, boys, for your forbearance and your help. Now, if you'll help me find my stuff and bring some of it, a computer and so on, up to the lounge? They did so. The and so on proving to be a bewilderingly miscellany indeed. Thank you immensely, gentlemen. Now I won't bother you any more. You've learned a lot, Doc, and we haven't learned much of anything, Destin grinned ruefully. That makes you the director. You'll have to tell us, in general terms, what to do. Oh, I can offer a few suggestions. It is virtually certain, 1, that no subspace equipment will function. 2, that all normal space equipment, except for some items you know about, will function normally. 3, that we can't do anything about subspace without landing on a planet. 4, that such landing will require extreme, I might almost say fantastic, precautions. Although both officers thought they understood item 4, neither of them had any inkling as to what Adams really meant. They did understand thoroughly, however, items 1, 2, and 3. Hell's jets, Destin exclaimed. Do you mean we'll have to blast normal to a system? It isn't as bad as you think, babe, Jones said. Stars are much thicker here. We're in the center somewhere, then around Sol. The probability is 0.9 plus that any emergence would put us less than 0.4 light years away from a star. A couple of them show disks. I haven't measured any yet. Have you, Doc? Yes, 0.22, approximately, to the closest. So what? Destin demanded. What's the chance of it having an Earth-type planet? Any solid planet will do, Adams said, just so it has plenty of mass. That's still quite a trip. Destin was coming around, especially since we can't use more than 1 point. 1.0 gravities, Jones put in. Over the long pole and the women, you're right, Destin agreed, and took out his slide rule. Let's see. 1 gravity plus and minus, velocity, time. It'll take about 11 months. Just about, Jones agreed, and Adams nodded. Well, if that's what the cards say, there's no use yelling about it. And all 9 survivors went to work. Destin, besides working, directed the activities of all the others except Adams, who worked harder and longer than did anyone else. He barely took time out to eat and to sleep, nor did either Destin or Jones ask him what he was doing. Both knew that it would take 5 years of advanced study before either of them could understand the simplest material on the doctor's tapes. End of Chapter 2.